Section 15 of Confessions, volumes 5 and 6. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Confessions, volumes 5 and 6, by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, anonymously translated. Section 15. The writings of Port-Royal and those of the Oratory, being what I most read, had made me half a Jansenist, and notwithstanding all my confidence, their harsh theology sometimes alarmed me. A dread of hell, which till then I had never much apprehended, by little and little disturbed my security, and had not Madame de Warrens tranquillized my soul, would at length have been too much for me. My confessor, who was hers likewise, contributed all in his power to keep up my hopes. This was a Jesuit named Father Aimé, a good and wise old man, whose memory I shall ever hold in veneration. Though a Jesuit, he had the simplicity of a child, and his manners, less relaxed than gentle, were precisely what was necessary to balance the melancholy impressions made on me by Jansenism. This good man and his companion, Father Copier, came frequently to visit us at Les Charmettes, though the road was very rough and tedious for men of their age. These visits were very comfortable to me, which may the Almighty return to their souls, for they were so old that I cannot suppose them yet living. I sometimes went to see them at Chambéry, became acquainted at their convent, and had free access to the library. The remembrance of that happy time is so connected with the idea of those Jesuits, that I love one on account of the other; and though I have ever thought their doctrines dangerous, could never find myself in a disposition to hate them cordially. I should like to know whether there ever passed such childish notions in the hearts of other men as sometimes do in mine. In the midst of my studies, and of a life as innocent as man could lead, notwithstanding every persuasion to the contrary, the dread of hell frequently tormented me. I asked myself, what state am I in? Should I die at this instant, must I be damned? According to my Jansenists, the matter was indubitable, but according to my conscience, it appeared quite the contrary. Terrified and floating in this cruel uncertainty, I had recourse to the most laughable expedient to resolve my doubts, for which I would willingly shut up any man as a lunatic, should I see him practice the same folly. One day, meditating on this melancholy subject, I exercised myself in throwing stones at the trunks of trees, with my usual dexterity, that is to say, without hitting any of them. In the height of this charming exercise, it entered my mind to make a kind of prognostic that might calm my inquietude. I said, I will throw this stone at the tree facing me. If I hit my mark, I will consider it as a sign of salvation; if I miss, as a token of damnation. While I said this, I threw the stone with a trembling hand and beating breast, but so happily that it struck the body of the tree. which truly was not a difficult matter, for I had taken care to choose one that was very large and very near me. From that moment I never doubted my salvation. I know not, on recollecting this trait, whether I ought to laugh or shudder at myself. Ye great geniuses, who surely laugh at my folly, congratulate yourselves on your superior wisdom. But insult not my unhappiness, for I swear to you that I feel it most sensibly. These troubles, these alarms, inseparable perhaps from devotion, were only at intervals. In general I was tranquil, and the impression made on my soul by the idea of approaching death was less that of melancholy than a peaceful languor, which even had its pleasures. I have found among my old papers a kind of congratulation and exhortation which I made to myself on dying at an age when I had the courage to meet death with serenity, without having experienced any great evils, either of body or mind. How much justice was there in the thought! A preconception of what I had to suffer made me fear to live, and it seemed that I dreaded the fate which must attend my future days. I have never been so near wisdom as during this period, when I felt no great remorse for the past, nor tormenting fear for the future, the reigning sentiment of my soul being the enjoyment of the present. Serious people usually possess a lively sensuality which makes them highly enjoy those innocent pleasures that are allowed them. Worldlings, I know not why, impute this to them as a crime. Or rather, I well know the cause of this imputation. It is because they envy others the enjoyment of those simple and pure delights which they have lost the relish of. I had these inclinations, and found it charming to gratify them in security of conscience. My yet inexperienced heart gave in to all with the calm happiness of a child, or rather, if I dare use the expression, with the raptures of an angel. For in reality, these pure delights are as serene as those of paradise. Dinners on the grass at Montagnole, suppers in our arbor, gathering in the fruits, the vintage, a social meeting with our neighbors, all these were so many holidays, in which Madame de Warrens took as much pleasure as myself. Solitary walks afforded yet purer pleasure, because in them our hearts expanded with greater freedom. One particularly remains in my memory. It was on a Saint Louis day, whose name Madame de Warrens bore. We set out together early and unattended, after having heard a mass at break of day in a chapel adjoining our house, from a Carmelite who attended for that purpose. As I proposed walking over the hills opposite our dwelling, which we had not yet visited, we sent our provisions on before, the excursion being to last the whole day. Madame de Warrens, though rather corpulent, did not walk ill, and we rambled from hill to hill and wood to wood, sometimes in the sun, but oftener in the shade, resting from time to time, and regardless how the hours stole away, speaking of ourselves, of our union, of the gentleness of our fate, and offering up prayers for its duration, which were never heard. Everything conspired to augment our happiness. It had rained for several days previous to this, there was no dust, the brooks were full and rapid, a gentle breeze agitated the leaves, the air was pure, the horizon free from clouds. Serenity reigned in the sky as in our hearts. Our dinner was prepared at a peasant's house, and shared with him and his family, whose benedictions we received. These poor Savoyards are the worthiest of people. After dinner we regained the shade, and while I was picking up bits of dried sticks to boil our coffee, Madame de Warrens amused herself with herbalizing among the bushes, and with the flowers I had gathered for her in my way. She made me remark in their construction 1,000 natural beauties, which greatly amused me, and which ought to have given me a taste for botany, but the time was not yet come, and my attention was arrested by too many other studies. Besides this, an idea struck me, which diverted my thoughts from flowers and plants. The situation of my mind at that moment, all that we had said or done that day, every object that had struck me, brought to my remembrance the kind of waking dream I had at Annecy 7 or 8 years before, and which I have given an account of in its place. The similarity was so striking that it affected me even to tears. In a transport of tenderness, I embraced Madame de Warrens. "My dearest friend," said I, "this day has long since been promised me. I can see nothing beyond it. My happiness, by your means, is at its height. May it never decrease, may it continue as long as I am sensible of its value, then it can only finish with my life." Thus happily passed my days, and the more happily as I perceived nothing that could disturb or bring them to a conclusion. Not that the cause of my former uneasiness had absolutely ceased, but I saw it take another course, which I directed with my utmost care to useful objects, that the remedy might accompany the evil. Madame de Warrens naturally loved the country, and this taste did not cool while with me. By little and little she contracted a fondness for rustic employments, wished to make the most of her land, and had in that particular a knowledge which she practiced with pleasure. Not satisfied with what belonged to the house, she hired first a field, then a meadow, transferring her enterprising humor to the objects of agriculture, and instead of remaining unemployed in the house, was in the way of becoming a complete farmer. I was not greatly pleased to see this passion increase, and endeavored all I could to oppose it, for I was certain she would be deceived, and that her liberal extravagant disposition would infallibly carry her expenses beyond her profits. However, I consoled myself by thinking the produce could not be useless, and would at least help her to live. Of all the projects she could form, this appeared the least ruinous, without regarding it therefore in the light she did, as a profitable scheme, I considered it as a perpetual employment which would keep her from the more ruinous enterprises, and out of the reach of impostors. With this idea, I ardently wished to recover my health and strength, that I might superintend her affairs, overlook her laborers, or rather be the principal one myself. The exercise this naturally obliged me to take, with the relaxation it procured me from books and study, was serviceable to my health. The winter following, Barillot returning from Italy brought me some books, and among others the Bontempi and La Cartella per Musica of Father Banchieri. These gave me a taste for the history of music, and for the theoretical researches of that pleasing art. Barillot remained some time with us, and as I had been of age for some months, I determined to go to Geneva the following spring and demand my mother's inheritance, or at least that part which belonged to me, till it could be ascertained what had become of my brother. This plan was executed as it had been resolved. I went to Geneva. My father met me there, for he had occasionally visited Geneva a long time since, without its being particularly noticed, though the decree that had been pronounced against him had never been reversed. But being esteemed for his courage and respected for his probity, the situation of his affairs was pretended to be forgotten, or perhaps the magistrates, employed with the great project that broke out some little time after, were not willing to alarm the citizens by recalling to their memory at an improper time this instance of their former partiality. I apprehended that I should meet with difficulties on account of having changed my religion, but none occurred, the laws of Geneva being less harsh in that particular than those of Berne, where whoever changes his religion not only loses his freedom, but his property. My rights, however, were not disputed, but I found my patrimony, I know not how, reduced to very little, and though it was known almost to a certainty that my brother was dead, yet as there was no legal proof, I could not lay claim to his share, which I left without regret to my father, who enjoyed it as long as he lived. No sooner were the necessary formalities adjusted, and I had received my money, some of which I expended in books, then I flew with the remainder to Madame de Warrens. My heart beat with joy during the journey, and the moment in which I gave the money into her hands was to me 1,000 times more delightful than that which gave it into mine. She received this with a simplicity common to great souls, who, doing similar actions without effort, see them without admiration. Indeed, it was almost all expended for my use, for it would have been employed in the same manner had it come from any other quarter. Section 15. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey.